much.
Welcome back, guys, to the manual transmission swap series. If you've been following along, thanks for joining me on every episode. This episode here is going to be the point of no return. This is when I rip the A650 out of the car. If this is the first episode you're checking out, I encourage you to go back and look at the other episodes so that you can catch up with us. But if you're just here to see the A650 come out, then welcome. I hope this episode helps you in your quest to do a swap or your quest for information. The plan is to deal with the trans tunnel area, get rid of all the levers, and then we're gonna start digging into the lower half of it and getting it all disconnected. I'm taking the plunge, I'm getting this 650 out of here. I've had about enough of this transmission, so let's get started. I debated about showing you all the specific instructions, like the armrest and the shifter and all those things. I think if you're willing to do a swap, you know how to do this or you can figure it out. I'm just gonna go ahead and rip it all out. It's pretty easy. Don't sweat that, especially if you're taking on a swap. It took about 10 minutes to get that out. What we're gonna do with the AR5 is we're gonna enlarge this into a square. So you can see that this lever, it's now disconnected. So really there's nothing aside from wiring and some oil lines that connect the A650 to your car, and of course your cross member and things like that. The next step is to get under the car. I'm gonna raise it up to disconnect the outlets at the catalytic converters. I'm gonna have to cut them off. I don't know if yours are gonna be like this as well, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut these heads off, and then that should knock this side through, and then we can just put new bolt and nut on this later. So after you cut the heads off, you should be able to grab it with pliers on the other side, and then this one actually just flew out at me. That was exciting. When you're doing a big job like this, like a swap, you got to plan for the unexpected. I cannot get out this Bank 1 Sensor 2. In fact, I broke the tool, the O2 sensor remover, just trying to get that loose. So I'm just gonna move it out of the way for now and try to figure out what I'm gonna do with it. Because these older cars, you just never know. Okay, next you need to get the exhaust system out completely, this crossbar thing, and then the shields for the drive shaft, or I guess you could say heat shields. You need to get those all off so you can pull the drive shaft down. We're gonna go after the drive shaft now. One way is to utilize the existing two-piece, because this is a two-piece. And the other way is to go to a one-piece, which places like XAT sell a one-piece, but there's, been some vibration challenges with the one-piece. Might be a good time to go ahead and mark the drive shaft, just in case. And then do the same thing here at the carrier bearing. You can go ahead and mark this one up and mark this one up. Here's a neat little trick if you left it in park like I did. So follow your shift rod forward to the side of the transmission, so it'll be all locked up on you, right? And you can move your selector from the side of the transmission until you get to neutral. And once you get to neutral, you'll be able to spin this around and undo these. So just a little trick if you were stuck in park like I was. There it is, the drive shaft. Next up is the removal of the cooler lines. I've heard this can be quite the pain. If you wanna just cut them, you can, they're gonna leak. In one of these two locations, and then there's another one right here. And then there's, I think, 3 total of these clamps that you're gonna have to get a 10 mil on, disconnect, and then you're gonna have to run all the way up to the front and disconnect up there as well. Have some type of oil pan or something ready, depending on how you're gonna do this. It's most likely gonna leak. Point of no return, here we go. So take off your drip tray, or your engine skid plate, and the next trans line clamp, the last one, is right up here above your engine oil pan. I know it's kind of hard to see, but it's a 10 mil up there. It's pretty easy to get out. Now everything is loose from these hard lines, and you just have to disconnect your hard lines at the appropriate spot. You can disconnect them on the radiator, however you want to do it. Those will be free. Next step, while the trans is still bolted into place, is to remove the 6 torque converter bolts. You're gonna have to take this cover off right here. So you're gonna need a 12mm wrench in order to get that off, and then this cover will slide off. You're gonna be turning the crank in order to rotate the torque converter, I guess. So each bolt will present itself in this window, and that's how you're gonna remove it. I'm turning the crank pulley gently with a long ratchet, and you can see the bolts that we're after come into view. Next, we need to disconnect, well actually we need to support the transmission, and then we are going to start to lower it down by removing the rear cross member in order to get to some of the wiring. Here's what we have rigged up. This is the Harbor Freight scissor lift for transmissions, 450 pound capacity. Raise it up using a drill to support the transmission, and then next step is to drop that rear cross member there. The weight obviously will be on the jack once the cross member is released, and then we can lower it down at our leisure to get to the wiring. Next, we're going after some wire harnesses. Just a quick note, take off your front subframe brace. I didn't do that, and it didn't drop down the engine and the transmission very well. After I did that, it came down much better at a better angle. Okay, it's time to start taking the bolts out of the bell housing of the A650 transmission, which are mated to the one using engine. This has been a lot harder than I expected. Major respect to those of you doing this with just jack stands, because even with a lift, this is extremely difficult. You're gonna need some pretty long extensions, half-inch extensions, different sizes, so you can get up in there, get those bolts loose. So they should break free fairly easy. I have to show you guys this. I have one heck of an extension going here on my impact gun to a 17 socket to the top bell housing bolt. I know it's dark, so I apologize, but holy cow, this is crazy. I mean, look at that. I don't know how you guys are gonna do this if you only have hand tools. Look at this extension. Oh, look at that. Let's be really careful with this thing. Okay, once you have your tranny out like this, your TC or torque converter is still going to be on it. Have a drip pan underneath because the torque converter is going to leak a little bit. So really all you have to do is pull on it and it'll come right off. Woo! That's heavier than I expected. Oh my goodness. So this is what you got here. And the reason we're doing this, of course, is because we need this bell housing. In case you were wondering, one of the most difficult jobs thus far was removing these hard lines out of there. Be sure to unplug your oil temperature sensor. It'll give you more room, and then don't be afraid to just hack these things up and fish them through really carefully. Let's get this flex plate off now. Should be 14 millimeter. Whoa, watch out for that. That actually kind of hurt. There we go. Okay, rear main seal time. I'm gonna take these off and pull this out. Oh, I guess there's another little thing there. I didn't show it on video, but you gotta get these two out as well. This is your oil galley seal right up here. It's on my parts list in my planning episode that I recommend you get, is that. And of course the rear main, which is on this retainer. you're gonna do your rear main, you know the drill. Get all this goop off of here so you can put the new stuff on. A lot of this is pretty crusty though, and make sure you get on this upper edge. Oh yeah, that's brittle. There's not a direction to install it. Some things you can take care of under the vehicle now. One will be the wiring, and I'll show you that in a minute. Two will be the opening and enlarging it. And if you're running the cube speed shifter, it's 2.5 inches forward. I'm gonna cut it basically in line with that. So after you do this, go up above, make sure that you're not gonna hit anything up there. That's what I have marked out. That's what I'm gonna cut, I hope. Next, you're going to want to measure this reverse switch sensor thing from the bell housing back, and it's exactly 16 inches. The reason we're going to do that is because we are going to actually knock the tunnel out a little bit to allow room for this. That's basically equal to this dowel that's sticking out of the transmission, so kind of follow that over, and you can kind of figure out where you need to knock that in a little bit. The best thing to do is to free up the wiring as much as you can and make sure you have more of this on hand and some electrical tape so that you can protect it again when you run it up by the bank 1 manifold. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I need this to be longer because we want to get this up and out of here. I'm going to get some wiring and I'm going to extend this out to the appropriate length, which will still allow me to get that up in there. So I'm just doing my solder connections here with some heat shrink, making it clean, hopefully doing it right. There's the VSS run. It's going to be, I'll fix this a little bit because now I need to tap the reverse wiring. I think it's on this plug here for the reverse switch on the AR5. After you have freed this connector from its protection, I want to show you what you're going to need to do to hook up your reverse switch so that when you put your manual in reverse, the reverse lights come on. This and this pin on the GS400, I think this one says 8. So you're going to cut or pull, you can yank that out if you want to and yank this one out, and then you're going to run an extension long enough to where it'll reach your manual transmission. Remember, you're going to take this whole thing and stow it up in the bank 1 area. So you've got to make sure that you add extensions onto these, okay? Now these 2 other ones here, these larger connections, you're going to jump them, which means you're going to solder them together and that'll allow your car to start. Now, the order that these reach the switch in should not matter. Okay, it's all ready. So when you put the trans in, we'll be able to just plug it in. Okay, now we're going to cut these and jump them. Strip them, solder them together, and they're jumped. Once you get everything done, start shoving it up in that bank one area, and then you're gonna have to come around the engine bay side and pull it through. What you want are these connections right here, up in there, see when you hook up your emulator later. And then these two obviously need to continue down, and you need to keep them away from the catalytic converter and any other hot items in there, like manifold and stuff. So I am going to go up around the other side and pull it through. The two plugs are run right up here right now, and what I'm going to do now is make sure that they're clear of any hot items and zip tie them kind of out of the way to prevent any damage. Okay, everything's run. This is what I'm left with. This is the VSS connector, and then over here is the backup switch. You can see that I went off the mark that I banged into the tunnel. That's how I gauged how much, and I coiled and stowed some up there. You can see I had some excess, so I just looped it. Temporarily secure your bell housing from your 650 onto your adapter, and figure out where you're going to drill the grommet holes and the 4AN line holes through. Okay, I got the Big Daddy on now. And since I have the pilot hole, I'm going to run it right through there. Switched to one of these bits just because it allows you to get a pretty big hole in here. Okay, obviously it's the right size, so now you got to find the right grommet and put the grommet in. So I have the grommet in and the feed line. I'll show you how I'm doing this. This is the bleed line. Basically, you take the grommet, put it over, slip that in through, and then you carefully engage the grommet in the hole that you just made. And it might seem like it's not going to fit, but that's good, because you want this thing to be super tight on there. Putting the fasteners back in to the throwout bearing. After adding the grommets with thread locker, I'm going to attach this bell housing now. I'm going to use thread locker, and I'm going to torque to 27 once I'm done. You can also use Scotch-Brite here. I just use a soft bristle drill attachment brush. This is your pilot bearing that comes with the XCT Racing kit. Now, just in case, before you knock this into the rear crank adapter, go ahead and just double check it here and make sure that it fits properly on here. There's no excessive play or anything like that, and it is good. So this is just, you're going to knock this in to be flush. This is a good time to drain your transmission and fill it. That way you don't have to do it when it's on the vehicle. So I'm going to go ahead, open up. This is a 24 millimeter socket. It's pretty big. I should probably use a funnel here, but yep, I'm going to let that drain. This is an 18 millimeter inner diameter washer, same thing on the fill plug. I'll let that drain, then I'll put a new washer on, get her buttoned up, and then we're gonna put the appropriate amount of fluid in here in a second. We'll get started on filling this thing up with MT90. So the Solstice manual, which would be what this transmission came out of, also says 2.75 quarts. So that's what I'm going to shoot for. Make sure that you get the old FIPG out of here. I'm using a dental pick. It's kind of a good tool to have in your arsenal. And once you get it started, most of it will come kind of peel out of there sometimes. I think it's easy to overlook that. You definitely want it all out because you're going to put the new stuff in that channel. Take that flex plate backing washer, plate, whatever. Take it and put it on there like that, and then take a rubber mount and it just comes right up. You can get a Felpro rear main seal, part number BS40659. Alright, just make sure that you hit your rear main until it hits the seated position all the way down. So I'm going to seal the rear main seal cover. I'm going to use 103. You can get this at Toyota for 17 bucks. I think I mentioned that in a previous video. Don't forget this underside surface here. I noticed FIPG was on it when I pulled this off, so it surprised me a tad. Alright, so you got some alignment dowels up here. If you go in at an angle typically on the seal, you can kind of push it around. Let's see if this works. Okay. Put some thread locker on each of your fastener threads, and then you're going to run them in real easy and torque to 71 inch-pounds. That's inch-pounds. Okay, don't forget the two that go up from the bottom here. These two pesky guys right here.